do better? What can we do to make Cincinnati better? I'm passionate about Cincinnati, and it's really good to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Next, we'll be joined by a current councilman who's currently running as an incumbent, Greg Lansman. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Greg Lansman. I was a teacher. My parents were teachers. I've been doing child education advocacy work my entire life, fighting on behalf of children and families, particularly those most marginalized. I helped to lead a really broad, diverse coalition to pass the Cincinnati Preschool Promise, which provides 2 years of quality preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds whose families couldn't otherwise afford it. On council, I was elected in 2017, began serving in 2018. I've led efforts around housing stability, creating our first ever eviction prevention fund, comprehensive eviction prevention reform, keeping thousands of folks in their homes, passed the largest increase in youth jobs, the largest increase in safety, and major development reforms to lift up local workers and Black and Brown owned businesses. And just recently reestablished the Safe and Clean Fund to help support community-driven safety plans.
Thank you very much. Again, we are excited to be joined by each of you. And again, this is a select audience of city council candidates that have been invited to participate this evening. And for those who don't participate that were invited, we will let you know that after the event. I don't see Brian Gary. He was scheduled to participate this evening. So we're going to move right along with the first question, and each one of you have an opportunity to answer it. I'll start with the order that you introduced yourselves initially, and then we'll mix that order up from question to question. So Ms. Castle, your initial question is, and the question for all of you is, what do you hope to accomplish if you are elected to city council?
It's a big question to answer in a minute and a half, but I'll do my best. As a teacher, as a mom, I want my kids to grow up and want to stay in the city. I want to keep talent here, build talent here, and really partner with our schools. So many families come to the city or leave the city based on how good our schools are. And these are neighborhood schools, not just our magnet schools. So I see myself as being a champion to make sure that all of our anchors, our universities and our businesses bring back resources to our youth. Education is a key to getting out of generational poverty. And I see increasing the rec centers and homework centers, our libraries, all these things that we need to do to support student services. If we help families as well with housing to give our kids some security, I really want to help with the tax abatement system and getting that working for neighborhoods and for people that need the affordable housing access. Right now, it's just been development in neighborhoods that don't need it as much. And if we can focus all of our mindfulness to places that do need investment and resources, I think that we can make a huge change. Who we elect this election is going to set the course for the next decade. And I would love to be there, really looking out for people.
Thank you very much. It seems that you're getting a little bit more time than I anticipated for the initial introduction. And so with that in mind, Andrew Kennedy, you have a minute and a half to introduce yourself.
Well, how do I follow that? That was perfect, Jamie. I'm voting for you. That was great. But here's the thing. What do I hope to accomplish? I like cleaner streets. I'd like a community that's more unified. I would like a more better paying jobs, more entrepreneurship. That's basically what I'm all about, and fiscal responsibility. In a nutshell, because I only have a minute, what I would like to do is kind of clone myself to Betsy Sunderman. She's my favorite. I think she's great. I think everything she always asks, how are we going to pay for this? And that's how I am up in Pleasant Ridge, living there with my wife, 2 kids, my dog Ellie. She's in the back seat. There she is. When you're a politician, you always got to show a pet. So there's my dog Ellie. And with that, my minute's up. So go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lansman.
Yeah, so I decided to run for reelection for two reasons. One was to continue the work to make sure Cincinnati was an infinitely better place for all children, all families, particularly those most marginalized. We have a lot more to do to ensure core services are protected, ensure that we have affordable housing for everyone, and invest in childcare in a way that we just don't today, so that everyone can get back to work and our kids are in quality childcare settings. A whole host of things I want to make sure I get done in the next term. I also decided to run again because I want to be part of fixing the culture at City Hall, where people are working collaboratively and we are getting things done, big things done, as opposed to what we've seen in the past, which is the kind of infighting that really undermines our ability to get a lot done.
Thank you. With that, I do not believe that we have yet been joined by Brian Gary, who was scheduled to participate this evening. So the next question goes to, and Ms. Patton will start with the next question with Andrew Kennedy's.
I'm here.
Brian
I didn't
Gary
know.
is on.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, Brian, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't realize I had to click some extra buttons. I was here, but I didn't know that I had to, there was a couple of buttons that I had to see about a panelist and whatnot. So anyway, sorry about that.
All right, well, we're at the question stage at this point. So will you go ahead and answer, what do you hope to accomplish as a city council member?
Okay, I see somebody else, but anyway, I want to turn our city around. I don't know, for some reason I'm just seeing some other person, but anyway, I want to turn our city around. I think our city is heading in the wrong direction. I think we're losing Black population. I mean, I know we're losing Black population, and I know that it's because of failed city policies or possibly purposeful city policies that have caused us to lose Black population in Madisonville, in West End, in in Walnut Hills, in Mount Auburn. And I'm very concerned about this. By not investing in people's lives in these neighborhoods and other neighborhoods, we've seen an increase in gun violence. When we had CCY, as an example, I want to reestablish CCY as a Cincinnati government agency like it used to be. I want to end gun violence in our city, end homelessness, end poverty, and finally address, I shouldn't say address, solve, invest in affordable housing in the way that we should. So these are the basic issues. My campaign slogan is One Cincinnati. We can bring us all together as one. We are truly one people, but we don't necessarily act that way. So we let some of our neighbors and some of our communities suffer and languish, where in other communities, we're fully invested. And we need to invest in real people's lives, like reestablishing CCY, which was defunded by a conservative council in 2006.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gary. It appears that the time clock is off. So, Ms. Patton, you can start please with Andrew Kennedy will answer the next question.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy, thank you for joining us. The question for all three of you, and I'll go with Mr. Kennedy first. What would you consider Cincinnati's three most pressing concerns?
I would say more jobs and better higher paying jobs. Building trust with the community, and those are my top two.
Okay. Then Mr. Landsman.
Thanks. Securing the resources we need to really increase the efficacy, the level of excellence of our core services. One, two, housing for everyone, making sure that everyone has access to quality, affordable housing, and 3, getting people back to work and ensuring that they're in good paying jobs. That will include a major investments in childcare.
Thank you. Jamie.
Thank you, Ms. Patton. How long would you like me to not exceed on this question?
Well, at this point, go.
All right, so the first one is poverty, and that's huge. We have a very high poverty rate. And with that, and we can address it many ways, but with that, if we can tackle it, you're going to see the crime rate go down, you're going to see graduation rates go up, home ownership go up, wages go up. So that's the number one thing that as a city together, we really need to look at and fix. After that, safety right now, you see public safety, pedestrian safety is a huge issue. We need to really get back to enforcing traffic laws. We need to do better design of our city so that it's safer, especially around schools. We need safe zones. We can really do a lot of traffic calming things that'll save lives. Third thing is accountability. I think we're all sick of corruption in City Hall with the council members of the past. And I think if we're more transparent with the people that elect us, we can do a lot with that. There's a lot of people that don't vote because they just don't trust the system. They don't trust the people. So we need to really restore the trust in the system and our elected officials.
All right, thank you. Brian Gary. And Mr. Gary,
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you restate the question? Is there a new question?
Now, what would you consider Cincinnati's 3 most pressing concerns or issues?
Okay, that's kind of like, okay. So my campaign slogan is One Cincinnati: Opportunity, Neighborhoods, and Equality. Opportunity, again, is affordable housing, because the way that people get out of poverty and into the middle class is through home ownership. And we should establish a revolving loan fund to help people get housing, especially African-American people, because in Cincinnati, they have about 10 to 15% of the net worth of the average white family. Neighborhoods, we have not invested in certain of our neighborhoods, but we have invested in others. And some of the neighborhoods that we have invested in, we've invested in them in ways that actually harmed the legacy residents, like Madisonville, where it is now only about 39% Black because of the city's investment in tearing down African-American houses. And the third part of One Cincinnati, ONE, is equality, and that relates to racial justice, racial equality. For decades in our city, in many different ways, in criminal justice, in housing, employment, education, African-American people have not had the same sorts of opportunities afforded to them as their white counterparts. And so we need to racial justice. I formed the Cincinnati Racial Justice Coalition with Reverend Damon Lynch III. And one of the things, thank you, no problem. No problem. Sorry about that. I can't see a timer, but sorry about that.
It's okay. Ms. Wolf, the next question will go to Greg Landsman to start. You're unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. What causes of justice have you stood for or fought for in Cincinnati?
So several. The big one, obviously, I mentioned was access to quality preschool. The vast majority of our children didn't have access to quality preschool, and almost all of those children were low income, Black and brown children. And so, we fought really hard to get that on the ballot and get it passed. Now, thousands and thousands of children have had access to 2 years of quality preschool, which has dramatically improved their readiness for school, which ultimately improves their chances in life. The second thing I mentioned was the eviction prevention work, which has kept thousands of families in their homes. A lot of folks have these low-paying jobs, and if one thing goes wrong in their lives, they can't pay rent. Well, this fund now helps them cover rent during those emergency situations. I'd also say that, we've been developing in a way that isn't balanced. And so I passed comprehensive reform in terms of our incentives to ensure that when we have an incentive, to a developer, we are lifting up local workers, and we're doing so in a way that ensures that they have good paying jobs, training, but also that those opportunities, those investments include our local businesses, particularly brown and Black businesses.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is Jamie Castle.
Thank you,
What causes of justice have you stood for or fought for in Cincinnati?
So my story, my backstory goes back with my Unitarian Universalist Church, which Judge Hunter, you have a lot of shared friends from there. But we are very vocal with social justice, anything, whether it be racial, environmental, LGBTQ issues. We have a congregation in Anderson, and with the whole mascot issue there at their high school, a lot of us really stood up for a name change because it was seen as racial and insensitive, offensive, all those things. I think that's really when I started getting more active. When it comes to these kinds of big issues, I think we all feel pretty small. But when we work together, we can find power in the togetherness of it. Since getting more politically active, I'm joining more organizations, the NAACP, Green Umbrella, working with them, working with the Human Rights Campaign, because all these things are so important to me. As a teacher, I have a lot of LGBTQ students, and I see them just struggling, and it's heartbreaking. So even with the kids, with the environment, and this is their future that we have to protect. So I see myself, again, as a champion for kids, for our people that have been marginalized. I want to be there really looking out for people and continuing learning and continuing fighting. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say Brian Geary. Are you ready? What causes of justice have you stood for or fought for in Cincinnati?
Wonderful question, Barbara. Thank you so much. Well, you and I have had such a history of fighting for justice in Cincinnati. I'm just parking in front of my house. Sorry. I tried to get home before I had to answer this question. But so just as an example, Barbara videotaped me, in fact, in 1994, when there was the city of Cincinnati had purchased and kicked out everyone from an apartment building down on Garfield Street in the Cincinnati Business District. And my mentor, Reverend Morris McCracken, there was a plan for him to get arrested and go over the fence, and he wasn't able to go over the fence. He was about 90 years old. And so I, in his stead, jumped over the fence and was arrested to protect affordable housing in our city since 1994. And before that, I was arrested, in fact, trying to help our immigrant brothers and sisters for immigrant rights at the federal building. And I have stood up for justice, in fact, for our host, Judge Tracy Hunter. I was an observer on her counting of the votes. In fact, if she hadn't insisted upon the counting of the votes at our Board of Elections, who is entrusted to count votes, and taken this to the federal court, she would have never been a judge. And then she was unjustly stripped of her judgeship, which I fought tooth and nail from the time she ran up until the time she was unjustly removed. So these are a few, a very few of the situations.
I'm sorry, I was yelling time.
So
Didn't realize I was muted while I was yelling.
I couldn't hear it. I
apologize
again.
I was yelling time. But thank you.
I couldn't hear it. I apologize.
It's okay, and thank you. And what he stated is true, in fact. But go ahead, Ms. Wolf. I'm sorry.
Okay, Andrew Kennedy. The question for you is: what causes of justice have you stood for or fought for in Cincinnati?
Yeah, well, not as much as to tell you what, they're all pretty stellar. But I have volunteered at the at Cincinnati Children's, done a lot of work with the Ronald McDonald House. Before that, I was a news reporter, and I was for 14 years, I've been working for a great logistics company here in town. And I've done a lot of work with the Regional Chamber of Commerce, championing businesses and small business owners. But I can't hold a candle to all the work that a lot of the people that Gary and Jamie and Greg have. They inspire me every day. So hats off to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the next question. The Huffington Post reported Cincinnati as the 5th most racist city in the United States. What will you do to help heal the racial and class divide in Cincinnati? And we'll start with Brian Gary.
Mr. Gary, you're muted.
Okay, I apologize. I had a little technical difficulty. Can you restate the question, please?
The question is, the Huffington Post reported Cincinnati as the 5th most racist city in the United States. What will you do to help heal the racial and class divide in the city of Cincinnati?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought those two together, because there is no racial justice without economic justice. Any racial justice without economic justice is hollow. So predominantly, the ways in which racial justice plays itself out is through economics, is through unequal pay, is through unequal criminal justice system. I mean, even the traffic stops, the people arrested for marijuana, all the things that we've done in our past, the situations with all the Black men who were killed, who lost their lives by our Cincinnati police. I will turn our city around, and we together, our city, from where we are now. We will invest in the Black community, not to remove them from the community.
Gary.
Sorry. All right.
Okay. Hi. And I apologize. I believe our timer is a little off this evening. So you're either getting more time or less time until it gets together. All right, Mr. Landsman, Councilman Landsman, please. The question is, again, the Huffington Post reported Cincinnati as the 5th most racist city in the United States. What will you do to help heal the racial and class divide within the city of Cincinnati? Or I guess I should say, what have you already done?
So interestingly enough, I went to divinity school, and this was my thesis. My thesis was on how you deal with structural racism and the disparities across race as it relates to housing and jobs and police interactions across the board. And one of the arguments that I made then and continue to do today is that part of it is closing the understanding from what people in power and who are doing well understand to be true about the suffering and issues that plague so many of our disadvantaged Black and Brown communities. So what I've tried to do throughout the years is to close that understanding gap, is to make sure that those that are in power, including myself, are fully aware of the challenges that people face, because I think good policy then follows. In terms of that good policy, ending our residential abatement program as we know it, so that we are desegregating the city, really investing in affordable housing again, so in a way that desegregates our city. I fought for the fully funding of the collaborative, the Citizen Action, the CCA, to ensure that we are constantly improving on community police relations, and that the interactions with police is across the board positive. So those are all ways in which I think we desegregate the city, get people to better understand one another, fundamentally change what's happening in Cincinnati.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, Greg mentioned trust between the police and the Black community, refund the CCA, trust between government and the Black community, invest in Black neighborhoods. But really, that's the million-dollar question. And I don't pretend to have all the solutions. I don't know, but I want to listen. But I commit to listening and to learning. I was raised in privilege in a mostly white neighborhood. For 10 years of my life, I've lived in a mostly Black neighborhood when I lived in Silverton, and I had some of the most lovely neighbors. And it was there that I learned how much racism is present in daily lives and started to face my own inherent biases. And I want to challenge other white people who were raised like me to look at their own hidden biases and beliefs and stereotypes. But that's all I have to say. I think my minute's probably up.
All right, thank you. And finally, Ms. Castle, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, okay, I've got it. Thank you so much. This is a heavy question, and it's a lot of interconnectedness. When you look at the poverty rate of Cincinnati, women have the highest rate, age 18 to 34, and you wonder how many are single women. How many of these are a lot of Black single women moms? I mean, we have to empower women, Black women in our city. And this goes, starting at education and opportunity, making sure that there are resources in place, helping families, making sure that there's childcare to support skills, upskilling, job learning, set people into careers to get the housing and the higher wages. I taught To Kill a Mockingbird this spring, and we did the little mini lessons on Black history and Cincinnati's history. Oh, I encourage everyone to really look into our past. And so much home ownership was kept away from Black families. I grew up in Green Hills. That was built for white families. I mean, it was very racist. Right now with Winton Woods, it's more interracial. It's amazing. I'm in Mount Washington now. It's pretty diverse as well. So we have to really have these mixed neighborhoods, and we need to invest in these neighborhoods that haven't seen investment, lifting up small businesses, lifting up families, creating generational wealth. There has to be a close of the income gap, and that's how you're going to lift people up so that there's more people working together. I think even cultural things like Blink and festivals is a way to really bring the community together, and I'd like to see more of that. Just a vibrant city that is just one community that gets along.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. And hopefully the candidates as well are able to watch the Blue Sky timer. Just glance, or I'll call time. Ms. Patton?
Okay, I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. I would like to start with Mr. Andrew Kennedy. And the question is, what efforts and projects have you already undertaken prior to running for city council to make Cincinnati a better place for all Cincinnatians?
Hey there. Well, let's see. I haven't as many as these as my opponents, and talk to them. I've been volunteering. Like I mentioned some of my own volunteering efforts, but going back to kind of what was said before is I kind of want to hit on that with my time is I want to mention I love the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think that it invites and challenges all of us to look at our own ourselves individually and as a society. We're asked that access to work on our own personal biases, even those that we might not be aware of, and at the same time, we're invited to examine the structures and organizations within our communities to see where racism has become a part of those structures, both intentionally and unintentionally. Black Lives Matter would not be necessary if our Black citizens had always been treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. And my vision is to make it so that every family, regardless of race, background, socioeconomic status, or circumstance, wants to be here in this town of ours because they know that in Cincinnati, everyone has the opportunity to thrive, and that we're all rooting for one another. So this is me saying I'm starting now, and I want to make Cincinnati the best I can possibly be. I'm 38 years old. I eat a lot of vegetables, and I'm going to be around a while. And I want to make Cincinnati as great as it can be. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Brian Geary, what efforts and projects have you already undertaken prior to running for city council to make Cincinnati a better place for all Cincinnatians?
So many things. I certainly have tried to end homelessness in our city. And I think that one of the recent accomplishments is the people of the West End. Of course, they were still trampled on by the city, by the powers that be. They were still removed and displaced out of the West End, which is sad. But Monica Williams, as an example, to this day is an owner of her building and is in a thriving business, due in large part to my advocacy for her. And to Greg's credit, Greg Landsman played a very strong role in that. He was my ally, my close ally, every day for about a year and a half that it took to get Monica back in business. But at any rate, Dr. Enoch, and I remember being on a bus going to Washington, D.C. to the head of HUD, to his house, to surround his house with people demanding a meeting with him for the people of English Woods. And ultimately, English Woods was also demolished. I think we probably worked together regarding the Huntington Meadows, trying to save it. But one more thing that I did help negotiate, I personally negotiated the largest per capita displacement settlement in the history of our city, which was, and Greg again was a very strong part of this in the room, was for the people of the West End who were displaced by the stadium. And at least, sadly they were moved, but at least we did the right thing and advocated for them and took care of them. And one thing I would love to see abolished is our housing court. There are those who are saying we need this housing court, but it's a racist and classist housing court. And I would encourage anybody to actually go to the housing court and sit in there and see the elderly people who are brought in there, and see poor African-American people and white people from different parts of the city that are drugged into housing court and forced to give their house to the Port Authority or to the land bank, through no fault of their own, just not being able to paint their house or something.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gary.
Yes, ma'am.
Jamie Castle, do you need me to read the question?
No, thank you.
All right.
So a lot of my background is in education. And before I worked for CPS, Cincinnati Public Schools, I was a volunteer. I ran the PTO here at Mount Washington School, and I was the chair of the local school decision action committee. I did a lot within my community here in Mount Washington. There's a lot of children in poverty. There's a lot of transient youth that go, back and forth between apartments. So we try to get them as many resources and the family's resources, parenting classes. We have an amazing resource coordinator here in Eileen Hayes. At my church, as a Sunday school teacher at the Unitarian Universalist Church, social justice is very strong in our curriculum. So being a good teacher of that to youth and being a role model. When I ran for Congress, I tried to really give voice to many issues, whether it be the opioid stigma, whether it be women's health and rights, LGBTQ rights, just giving voice. My sister's disabled too, so I've joined the Disability Caucus, and I'm always looking for ways that we can advocate for people that are kind of forgotten. So it's ongoing. Again, I try to be a good role model, a good teacher. And I'm sure if I do it deeper, it would be many more things. But as my world's getting bigger, it's harder to ignore all these things that we need to fix. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Greg Landsman, please.
Sure. So for me, my passion has and will always be around children and families, which, includes parents and grandparents. If a city's doing really well by our kids and our families, then it's, typically the case that everyone's doing well, and the opposite is true. So before I was on council, obviously I helped to pass the preschool promise, and also set up an early literacy and development venture fund that has provided every single child in the city of Cincinnati with a book for the first 5 years of their lives. And the next big investment is around helping every expecting mother access the prenatal care that she and her baby will need for the time prenatally and through the first year, which is a developmentally critical time for children. And I've tried to continue to focus on those issues, whether it's getting wages up, making sure people are in stable, quality housing, taking folks to court, the big property owners who aren't doing right by their tenants, helping tenants, as Brian talked about, and ensuring that public safety is a basic fundamental civil right that isn't denied to anybody, anywhere. So so with a new council and mayor, so that we're getting real results all the time, and people are working really well together.
Thank you, Time. Ms. Wolf, please unmute yourself. You're still muted.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that. All right, we'll start with Jamie. What has prepared you to be a city council member?
My run for Congress did a lot for me. I had to deep dive into issues and learn all the background to connecting with organizations and connecting with people on the street. And I took classes through Senator Sherrod Brown's training, the Canary Candidates, last summer. And then I did it again this summer. I'm doing the city council boot camp right now, because it's one thing to want to do well, but it's another to learn how to do the legislation and the policy. So that's the part that I'm really trying to fill in the gaps. I have been studying what other cities are doing that are successful. I took an online Harvard class too, like just with urban development and ways that we can catch Cincinnati up. Cincinnati for too long has been a joke as far as being behind, but it doesn't have to stay that narrative. We can change that. We can be the model that other cities follow in so many avenues, from education to public and community, police community relations. We have potential here. So I'm continuously learning, and I feel like I've had a lot of training as far as how to do the next steps, but I'm never going to take for granted that I know everything. And I hope to connect with more organizations, more people, more leaders, more faith communities throughout this last month and after this. I'm not done after this. I'm going to keep going. Thanks so much.
Okay, Andrew Kennedy, what has prepared you to be a city council member?
Thanks. Well, one of the most common criticisms of my campaign is that I have no government experience. And they're exactly right. I don't, but I look at that as sort of a good thing. I was a news reporter for a couple of years. I've been working for, again, Total Quality Logistics for the last 14 years. And I love to take that no-nonsense leadership approach that can work wonders for my company and apply it to the city of Cincinnati. There's about 6,000 employees at TQL. There's about 6,000 employees in the city. And just being able to watch that leadership has prepared me. And really, when you ask about what's prepared you, a lot of it for me is what's in the person's heart. And for me, my dream is about bringing Cincinnatians together in order to solve problems and make Cincinnati the greatest city it can possibly be. My vision is to make it so that every family, regardless of race, background, socioeconomic status, circumstance, wants to be here in this town of ours, because they know that in Cincinnati, everyone has the opportunity to thrive, and that we're all rooting for one another, and that we're all equal, and that we're all on the same team. And so for me, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. For me, it matters what is in your heart right now. And right now, I'm doing everything I can, and win or lose, I'm fully invested in this town. I know that I'm going to be here till I die, and I want to see it be the best it can possibly be. So no matter who makes it on, I'm going to root them on. But for me, working for Cincinnati families, ridding City Hall of corruption, making a more prosperous Cincinnati will never be a mission.
You're over time, Mr. Kennedy.
A job for me. It's my passion and my mission. So thank you so much.
You got a mute button.
Try to listen to us, please. Oh yeah, that's what we do. Let's mute if they go over too far.
Okay, Brian Gary, the next question is for you, or the same question. What has prepared you to be a city council member?
Such an interesting question.
back in several years ago, it seems like most of the city council people were lawyers, and somehow that is what prepared you to be on city council. But in fact, interestingly, some of the things that Andrew was saying, I think are actually, true. And as far as what do we want? Who do we want on city council? We want people with a good heart. We want people who actually care about people. So, I had a rough childhood. Fortunately, I was blessed, when I was a child, went by and others who put me on the path of social justice. So I think 38 years of social justice in our city, being intimately involved with all the communities in every corner of our city, trying to help people escape from addiction and homelessness. The people who I think we often talk about, but many people don't know or actually have hands-on experience. As a working class person, I've seen things from that perspective, being raised from that perspective in Bonds Hill, strong working class neighborhood. And I have had, government experience, but maybe on the outside of the government, but actually changing policies. Because, as most of the government policies, as Greg could probably attest, is that people from the outside are pushing, and then the government actually does something about it. And I've been a leader of many of those movements, pushing these changes in Cincinnati for racial justice, for economic justice.
Thank you.
Greg Landsman, what has prepared you to be a city council member?
So I think being a teacher made a big difference. Being raised by teachers, made a big difference in terms of my commitment to, the fact that everyone has enormous potential, but it's on us to invest in them, to make sure that they have everything they need to achieve what it is that they want to achieve. I also worked in Washington. I got to see what does and doesn't work in Congress, and worked in the governor's office, was able to run a large effort here around ensuring every child is succeeding every step of the way when I led the Strive Partnership. I've run several successful ballot measures, one around preschool, one around public transit, one to really diversify our police and fire departments, issue 15. And I think, just the way I was raised by folks who believe in hard work, working your tail off, problem solving, being kind to people, and always understanding where the line is, and under no circumstances coming anywhere near the line, so that you can maintain, the highest level of integrity.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Next question, and we're approaching 8 o'clock. However, we did start 10 minutes late, and I do know we shifted one of our candidates in the second hour to next week's forum. So we have a little bit of time, in order to be fair and make sure that all of the candidates get as equal amount of time as possible. I'm going to extend a few minutes over 8 for our next group, because there's a little time to work with. So the next question for each of you is, and I'll start with you, Ms. Casso, is what will you do if elected to city council to combat the high crime and homicide rate in Cincinnati, especially in certain urban neighborhoods?
So again, there's an interconnectedness of all of this. One of the things being education. Right now, we're seeing a lot of youth crime. And maybe if we invested in youth and opportunity and safe housing and strong safe families, we can really do a lot to combat that. I think with funding the collaborative agreement or the Citizens Complaint Authority and going back to the collaborative agreement, these are good steps as well. But it's going to take all hands on deck. I like the whole 30 by 30 initiative by our police department, that they want to increase the police 30% women by 2030. I think that will do a lot to get good officers on our streets. I think this whole community policing will make a big difference too, when police understand and know the neighborhoods and the people by name, and likewise. It's going to take faith communities, it's going to take private partnerships, and everybody invested, because it does take a village to raise a child in one big. I'm always looking at ways that we can support families and youth and get to the reasons of why is this crime happening. Once we get people out of incarceration too, like what are we putting them into? We got to get them into housing, we got to get them into jobs and careers. And I think that'll help too without the recidivism. So it's a multifaceted, hard thing, but we have to attack it.
Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy. I'm sorry, Ms. Castle, forgive me.
Ms. Castle, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. Mr. Kennedy, same question. If elected to city council, what will you do to combat the high crime and homicide rate in Cincinnati, especially in certain urban communities?
Yeah, and there's so many kind of levers that we can pull and twist, and Jamie captured on a couple of those. But I think the single biggest thing is I believe we need to create good jobs and and that pay a living wage, and that educate and train people to fill those jobs. We also need to focus on entrepreneurship among minorities and low-income areas. I want to encourage people to dream big. Simply working only on wage increases, I feel, will keep people down and reliant on their employer. And I truly believe, this is just me, but I think true freedom comes when you branch out and you realize that you can save and then start your own business. And most people don't want you to know that. It isn't going to be easy, but if you have the drive, and I want to encourage that drive, and I want to encourage other people to do it, then when you have your own business, you can pay your employees tons of money that you think they deserve. But small business is the true paramedic to fighting crime and lifting groups of certain people in certain areas out of poverty, in my mind. Some employers would rather you stay stuck working for them. But if you like working for them, that's great. But if you want to find a way out, I think entrepreneurship can do that. And we need entrepreneurship, I think, classes in high school too. And I want to work on empowering others up. And by doing that, I think crime will drop.
All right, thank you. Mr. Landsman.
Yeah, so a couple things. One is I'm a firm believer that, when communities drive their own safety work, you get the best results. So, we just reestablished the Safe and Clean Fund and a process for communities to submit their own safety plans that will allow them to identify what they need. And the fund will allow us to help invest in what they need. So additional lighting, taking care of blighted buildings, resolving litter issues, cameras, a whole host of things. And it's part of a larger community policing strategy that when we spend a lot of time investing in it, it works. And so big fan of Pivot and all of the work to get our police problem solving with community. The gun task force work that's underway has made a huge difference in getting over 1,300 guns off the street in just 9 months. The task force will be even more successful once they're in a building and everyone's in one space, making sure that we're getting these guns. Ultimately, we're going to have to dramatically increase our investments in young people. And so I'm with Brian on reestablishing CCY. We got $1 million for youth jobs. We need to be investing close to $10 million in our young people.
Thank you, Mr. Landsman. Mr. Gary.
Thank you, Gregory. Yeah, in fact, we're working together on some of these issues with the youth and reestablishing CCY. We have to say what works. Do police actually keep us safe? Do millions of police keep down crime? Is that how it works? Desperate people do desperate things. But the fact is that nothing beats a bullet like a job, to Andrew's credit, as he was mentioning. So reestablishing CCY. But first we have to stop this massive investment. Or I should say maybe not stop, but what we've invested in is 97% of our investments as a city have been invested into luxury condos, stadiums, streetcars, and just basically ignoring entire communities. We have to invest in people. We have to really change our priorities. Like, who was it? I know Biden and other people said, don't tell me about your budget or what you value. Show me your budget and I will tell you what the things are that you value. So, I was amazed in some of the things that I did when I was on the executive committee of the NAACP. When I was the community coordinator, we stopped the trash tax that was going to harm especially people in lower incomes. We stopped the building of a new jail twice. They put it on the ballot. We stopped. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're at time here. And we're going to present you with one more question before we wrap up for the evening, Ms. Patton.
Oh, you want to do that? Okay. All right. I will start with Mr. Brian Geary. What will you do and how will you maintain your integrity when developers or others present opportunities to influence your vote as a council member? And Mr. Geary, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I'm having difficulties. Can you repeat the question?
What will you do and how will you maintain your integrity when developers or others present opportunities to influence your vote as a council member?
Well, I wasn't endorsed by the Democratic Party, partially because I wouldn't be influenced by developers. At least that's what they said. And what's so interesting is I think that's why I wasn't endorsed, because I wouldn't be the first person that they're going to come to anyway. And I kind of doubt that they're really going to come to me at all because of that. I feel that developers shouldn't even be approaching city council people, that relationship shouldn't even exist. I mean, that breeds corruption in and of itself. Why should developers have access or even give money to city council people? They shouldn't be giving them any money at all, because that's undue influence. That is corruption. If a person can make all these donations and then one hand scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, or whatever. I mean, that is how we have had this corruption in our city. It's developer corruption. It's because you give us all these tax abatements and fill our pockets full of change, and we'll make some contributions to get you elected. It's wrong. It should be people.
Hi, Mr. Geary, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Jamie Castle.
I think I share some of that anger, Brian. It's unfathomable that people would take the honor of being elected and then use it for personal gain. For me, I just have too much on the line as a mom of kids, as a teacher in my church community, for my family, friends. Like, I would never put myself in that situation. I think, though, it's not going to be an issue. I think the city has learned its lesson. I hope so. Moving forward, terms are only 2 years, but we've gotten back to, why are city council members talking about development deals? It should be the city manager office, and we can set a whole rubric in place that will give developers expectations when they're doing plans. So that's something that we can do to even limit that conversation. So this is not something that will happen to me. This would not be a situation I would be in. Just, I know in my heart, and I know that developers, I don't even know them, so I have no personal relationship with any right now. I wouldn't even know where to go to try to get a fundraising campaign contribution. I'm not from an insider politic position. I'm learning all this as I go from last year, and it's just, my heart's in the right place and I trust my heart there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, and that's my favorite question of the night, because this is the whole reason why I'm running. I should never even think about being in politics, and yet here I am. I never thought I'd run. But the last straw for me was the corruption in City Hall. And we need to be skeptical of politicians who are getting involved in deals and empower and entrust the professionals that work in City Hall, whose job it is to deal with them who are getting paid through our tax dollars to do so. And when there is some sort of impasse, then council needs to discuss it openly and transparently and honestly and in the public eye. It is council's role to understand what's happening surrounding the developments and assist the city manager and development staff in prioritizing if asked. This so we can achieve a larger initiatives that we want. But furthermore, I will work with other council members to come up with a code of conduct so we can hold each other accountable. As a member of council, you can and should make the proper introductions, like Gary was saying, between developers and other parties, and then butt out, empower others. This to ensure that voters, those folks know that they're getting a fair hearing, that they deserve, not given out as favors, but given out based on what's best overall for the city. And then additionally, on raising ethical standards, we all know the state legislature has already.
Time.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Gary.
No, that should be Mr. Landsman.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you so much. I was getting distracted trying to prepare for the second group. Go ahead, Mr. Landsman.
Thanks, yeah, the council sets policy. The administration has to handle all aspects of operations. Council members, the mayor should not be getting involved in operations, whether it's development or anything else. So that was something I always committed to, was if somebody, knocked on my door and wanted to talk about their project, whether it was a development or not, it was, well, here's the folks that you need to talk to in the administration. And oftentimes I would say, I believe the priorities need to be affordable housing, local jobs, the inclusion of local businesses, anti-displacement, community engagement efforts. We then codified that, which is what I had said, from the beginning, when anyone asked me about this, in a new balanced development scorecard. So now it's policy, and now the administration is operationalizing that, which will hopefully change the course trajectory of our development projects. I'm also pushing for full disclosure, immediate disclosure of campaign contributions of any kind over the amount of $200 within 72 hours, because we vote every week, and putting in place a new good government and ethics officer to handle trainings and all kinds of other things that will help clean things up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Landsman. I believe that each person has had an opportunity to respond. We're going to wrap up at this time, and I'm going to allow each person to give 1 minute to wrap up your press for City Council. And I'll start with you, Mr. Gary.
He's not on there.
I think he got disconnected.
I'm going to say it appears he's been dropped.
All right, let's go to Ms. Castle, Jamie Castle.
Okay, thank you, Judge Hunter. So I want to encourage everybody watching today to really talk to your friends and get them out to vote, because we have seen a very low turnout on these off presidential election years. And that's really sad. Again, this is going to be who we elect now is going to drive the course of where the city goes in the next decade or so. And it's really important that folks understand these candidates, where they're coming from, what their vision and plans are. For me, no, a vote for me is going to be looking out for our future, our kids, getting education stronger by working with our schools, helping neighborhoods have a voice again, and really prioritizing people here, keeping people here, bringing people here, and growing in a mindful, just, sustainable way. So please do check me out at castleforcincinnati.com. Thank you so much for this opportunity, everyone who put this together tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Landsman.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, so my whole approach to public service is, always be grounded in what is core to you, and fairness and justice, and making sure that we are working to help those who are most marginalized is at the core for me, and want to continue to be that leader, that reliable leader on council, to focus on the big things and not get just pulled into the everyday and overlook really continue to work on tackling the really big challenges that we face. And to do that, thirdly, you got to make as many friends as humanly possible, and under no circumstance you intentionally make enemies. And I think that is a brand of politics that we desperately need, which is people who are working really well with other folks to get results for the people who need it the most, as opposed to arguing. And so that's the kind of leader I'll continue to be on council if reelected.
Right. Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Judge. And so the expectations I have for our city are very high, and I believe that all of the community should have very high expectations in their leadership. But I like to always say, don't ever let government tell you don't let anyone ever tell you that when government entities begin to fail, that you can't turn things around for the better, and that means the people. And I believe that's happening. A lot of great people are running for city council, and that's exciting to me. A lot of great people are getting involved too, and we have so many fantastic quality people running and that are on the ballot this year, and that brings me hope, because the people themselves can turn things around, and that means us. But I hope that answers your questions. But I'm so excited to work alongside alongside any number of the folks that are on the ballot this year, and what's shaping up to be the next generation of Cincinnati City Hall leaders that are going to take shape on November 2nd. And there are going to be a lot of.
All right. Thank you very much. And we want to acknowledge all of our candidates for Cincinnati City Council that participated in this evening's event. That was Greg Landsman, Andrew Kennedy, Brian Gary, and Jamie Castle. We're not sure what happened to Brian Gary at the end, but again, we want to thank you all for participating. This coalition, or this political forum, was hosted by the Coalition for a Just Hamilton County. It is available on Facebook and will remain available on Facebook throughout the upcoming November election. With that, we do want to invite everyone that is still on to stay on for the second hour. We have Jan Michelle Lemon-Kearney coming up, as well as should be Jeff Cramerdine, as well as Lakeisha Cook. We've moved our fourth candidate to next week due to scheduling conflicts. Therefore, they should have plenty of time this evening. All of the candidates will be provided an equal amount of time to answer questions. So again, at this time, we're going to take a brief break so that we can transition to our next set of candidates. Mr. Landsman, Mr. Kennedy, and Ms. Castle, again, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Patton, Carol Patton, co-moderator for tonight, as well as co-moderator Barbara Wolf. We want to thank our timekeepers this evening, Mr. Mike, and stay tuned for the next group of candidates as well as new co-moderators. Thank you very much. We'll be back after this. We need to demote Ms. Patton. Ms. Wolf. Pardon me?
I was just asking if you guys can hear me okay.
Yes, we hear you fine.
Okay, did you promote Reverend Dorsey and Senator Thomas?
Promote them to what?
They are promoted, so I'm trying to figure out why.
No, I haven't touched anything, no.
Okay, let me put them back. Interesting. I cannot put them back. Wait a minute, hold on. Let me come over here and put them back.
And I need Kathy Tyler and Jenny Brown. I can't find them.
Okay, I see Kathy promoting her now. And Jenny Brown promoting her now.
I don't see Jeff Carmody. Is he on yet?
I still don't see him. So weirdly enough, Senator Thomas is not promoted, but I do see him up here on stage and I can't figure out why.
Excuse me.
So on stage, we have Kathy Tyler, Jenny Brown, Lakeisha Cook, Jan Michelle, Lemon Kearney. Ms. Patton, are you supposed to be on stage right now?
No, I'm not.
Okay, let me,
Can you hear me, Dr. Enoch?
I do, I hear you.
And I don't have a camera. Yeah, I need a camera, please.
Okay, hold on a second, let me. Okay, you should be able to use your camera. As soon as I find Ms. Patton, I will take her off of the stage. Okay, is everybody who is currently on the stage supposed to be on the stage? Looks like it, okay. Jenny, oh, there you go. And I still don't see Mr. Kramerding.
That's fine, we'll just keep it moving.
All right, I'm going to prepare the live stream again. All right, we are preparing to go live now.